When you get a machine brought to you that needs repair, what are the most common parts that are either missing or broken on that machine?
The Morflex couplers, the dust bands, the shrouds, the tool plates, the 1457s. We do get cut cords, missing weights, broken weight baskets.
When it comes to assessing, what the priority might be if a customer says, I need a bare bones, just get this thing running right, something's not right with it. I mean, what are top of the list as far as essential pieces that have to be repaired or replaced?
Oil change, because most of the ones we do get in do require an oil change. Couplers, because that's going to determine mostly on how it's cutting. The cotter pins and the hitch pins that hold the handle to the head, because lots of times there might be burrs or damage to those so they don't slide freely in the slot.
When you're talking about hitch pins, you're talking about the handle assembly where it meets the gearbox?
Correct.
So why does that matter?
Because that's what's going to influence the pickup points of the machine. So if one side is bound up compared to the other, it might pick up on that side of the gearbox, which is going to put more pressure on the other side, which is going to make you cut heavier on the left or the right, depending on what side is tight and what side is loose.
How often do you get calls about machines cutting heavy on one side or the other?
The calls quite a bit, and that's going to be determined usually between the pins there or between the couplers.
The first thing to assess is the pins or the couplers?
The couplers, because the couplers are more visible, so when you tip the machine back to look at your couplers, you can see if they're starting to split. Another easy way to test is if you take the plates off the left side and put them on the right side and vice versa. If the problem follows with the couplers, then you know that the problem would lie within the couplers of the tool plates. If the problem stays with that one side of the machine, then you know that it's where the pickup points where the handle is meeting the gearbox.
When it comes to problems like that, I mean, that's something that can usually be, you can do the troubleshooting over the phone.
Yeah, most customers will call first, so then we can go over that stuff on the phone to help diagnose. And then if it comes to a case where they just can't figure it out and can't get to the point, then it's where we might need to get it in here to assess the situation, because then it could get into a bigger thing like a bent handle or anything.
When it comes to doing the repairs, I mean, it's really just a matter of how the machine gets here. Once it's in your guys' hands, you pretty much are able to take it from there as far as the repair. Is it a complicated process, or is it just a matter of shipping it in, bring it in, or how difficult is it for people to go from the call with you to actually getting a machine in your hands?
It all depends on the location. It's pretty easy to get it here because you either ship it here, if it's farther away, or if they're within the area and they can drive it, they can drop it off and bring it in a trailer.
When it comes to the turnaround time on the equipment, I mean, you've talked about couplers, you've talked about pins. Let's say those are the two most common problems. What kind of time is a customer looking at to get those assessed, repaired where necessary, or in the case of the couplers or pins, replaced? How long of a job is that?
If it's something basically with the couplers or just the pins and for us to run the machine, time-wise, typically just an hour or two.
When it comes to a check-in procedure, is there a checklist for safety if there's any concerns there with electricity? How do you guys assess the machine from, let's say, entering the building to the point of furnishing an estimate?
We do have a checklist procedure that we go through as we're checking off the machines. The main focus would be on repair, but we do still go through the whole machine for safety purposes or anything else that we may see that the customer may not have, that he may want done. So we would at least let it be known, and then they can make that decision if they want that changed. Thing like the power cord, if it's cut and it's pretty dangerous and it looks bad, we will notify the customer. We would recommend replacing it. If they wouldn't want us to, we would take the cord off the machine and send it back with the machine but not installed.
Once the work is completed, you guys are actually running it, or how do you actually verify that everything is now functioning the way it's supposed to be?
We'll usually run it first with nothing, let it run, make sure everything sounds good and everything's good. Then we will run it with the plates and we will put test diamonds on it and we will use it on the floor, and then we'll use a heat gun to check the heat temperatures to make sure that everything's cutting evenly and everything's working properly.
I know there's a lot of different things that can be wrong with these machines when they're brought in. We have one out there right now that's going to get probably the full boat as far as, the guts of the machine actually being ripped out and changed out with new stuff. But the machine, I think, is like 14 years old. You kind of quickly go through what that process looks like as far as, from tear down to replacement to rebuilding?
A complete rebuild is somewhere right around 8 hours. So what we would do is start with removing the motor. Then we would also want to drain the oil. We'll get all the oil out of the gearbox because then we can tip it up, take everything off from the bottom side, and then we can take the top lid off of the gearbox to expose all the gears and bearings, all that. So then we'll pull all that out, because when we do a complete rebuild like that, we'll inspect the parts, but the typical things that we're going to replace is all the bearings, the seals, the shafts. More in a case like this where it's such an old machine, more than likely the shafts.
The gears, though, are usually okay?
Typically they're okay as long as we see that there's oil inside the gearbox and that there's no damage inside there. Typically the gears are not damaged. The only time we usually see gear damage is if it's been ran dry on oil and the bearings break or anything like that, where debris gets inside the gears and the teeth get chewed up.
How could oil leave a sealed gearbox?
If the shims are not correct, the oil seals can just break down over time. It could be 2 years, could be 8 years. It all depends on the seal and also the maintenance of the machine. If a machine's washed properly after work, slurry and debris get built up around that shaft up near that seal. It's pretty abrasive, so that going around a metal shaft and a rubber seal causes wear and damage.
What's the reason to change the oil, and how often should it be changed in these machines as regular, maintenance?
We recommend changing it about every 6 months. Definitely I would check it probably monthly. It's always good to have a good eye on how much oil level is in there. The correct oil level is 1.75 inches from the base of the gearbox. So if you opened up the opening on front of the gearbox and stick a rod down inside there and pull it back up, you should have 1.75 inches on the rod, like a dipstick in a car.
I know people call you all the time and regularly compliment you guys on your ability to help pretty much, the majority of the time over the phone. As far as walk-ins or people that, need to bring a machine in, if it's during regular hours, might show up unannounced, but they have a machine that they need to get working for one reason or another. They just need to get the thing fixed. How ready are you guys for the stuff that you talked about to be able to change out if it is an emergency?
We do stock all these components as long as we have them here and there's nothing else ahead of it, because we do prioritize the repairs as they come in. So if we have 2 repairs here, those 2 repairs would take precedence over somebody who just dropped one off. But if we do not have a repair in the lineup and somebody just dropped this off and said, hey, we really need this running right away, we'll jump right on that to get that fixed. So if it is a situation where we know at least ahead of time and everything, where we have it set aside and made sure we have the parts, it is a possibility to have something turned around within that same day so that they can get it back. If not, they may have to leave it here overnight and come back the next day and pick it up, or depending on the pieces, however long that lead time is to get it in.
Now, I'm assuming most people, once they talk to you, they just keep calling you, and if they need to line up a repair, they tell you, and then you kind of get that coordinated here, or?
Correct. Typically they contact me first, because we will go over anything we can, because if we can get the customer up and running without bringing it here, it saves them money.
So in most cases, though, if people are bringing a machine in to have it looked at, they probably already talked to you guys to try to get it fixed over the phone without the expense and the time of having to bring it here.
Yeah, typically I encourage people to talk to us over the phone first before just bringing a machine in, because we can save them time and money if it's something we can get going over the phone.
Well, thanks for taking the time to sit down and tell us more about what you guys do back there. Appreciate it.
No problem, anytime.